All right, so some very key things, and I'm going to show you a few slides, and then we're going to get into Yammer, because it's more fun to be in the product than in the slides. Key things, just like any other aspect of being social in today's world, whether you're in your social, personal life, or certainly social in enterprise social. You've got your profile, which has basic information about you. Definitely encourage you to have a headshot. Nothing quite like names and faces together. It's great when you're walking down the hallway and somebody will kind of do a double take and they recognize who you are by your picture in Yammer. Groups. Groups have been a big focus this week, not only in Yammer but Office 365. So groups are very important in Yammer as how you tend to work, how you tend to post to have that information. Depending on your network, there can be lots and lots of different groups. That can be very overwhelming to start. So we encourage you to pick 3, maybe 5, depending. Pick 3 that are important to you, to the work that you do, the business that you get done, the teams that you're on, and join those groups. Then post your update. Post your first update. Maybe you've been a little nervous about what you're supposed to put out there. Go ahead and do a post. In fact, that's why it's great to play with us today in this network, because you can treat it as a lab environment. See what happens when you do those posts, and then you'll know how it's going to work back in your own network. And then like a post. So easy to give what I call that quick shout out to somebody when you hit like. They know that you've read it, you see what it's about, they know that it's out there. And then, of course, a reminder about that mobile piece. That's big in our world. Definitely have the mobile. And then our hero tip, be sure to bookmark success.office.com. All right, so a little bit more about what's happening behind the scenes in your profile. Lots of different things can be found here. This is kind of your starting point for your information. So when you click, and there's different ways to get there. I tend to click on my name to get there. You can see a variety of things that you can take care of. One is you can update the profile. So let's say you want to change your background or add some experience. You can update your profile. You'll see our hero tip has to do with you can modify your name, and a lot of people will do that for that out-of-office message. So you can see on the screenshot, I have Dawn Garten, Microsoft. But if you're in the network now or have been this week, you've seen I changed my name, tied it to the 0 to hero, and the date and time for today's session. Just another visual reminder when people start tagging me in post that they're going to see that. So a great power tip is to add that out-of-office information. You also have a nice collection of your content. So your posts, updates, information that you shared, you can click through those tabs and have easy access to get there from that perspective. Notifications. This is a biggie for me. I like to remind everybody, you are in charge of what you receive. Now, yes, in the beginning, by default, a lot of notifications from an email perspective are turned on. So if you don't need those email notifications, be sure to go in and edit your profile and turn off what you don't need. And I'm going to show you that in just one second. But there are notifications throughout the system. So in your inbox, different places where you can go check if you've been @mentioned, you'll see notifications. The little bell, so if somebody has liked your post or they want to, if something has changed that you're following, you'll get a notification there. On the groups side, you can see if there's been additional posts made that you have not seen since you've been in that group. So it gives you a high-level view of there might be information there to go discover that you have not seen. And then there's the network. So when it comes to networks, you have your home network, and then there are external networks. So for example, if your business uses Yammer, and then you join the Ignite network, your company network is your home network, and the Ignite would be an external network. Now, there are lots of external networks that you can look to join. There's professional industries, there's this event, there's different organizations that will create networks. So what you'll find as you get more adapt into Yammer is that there's new ways that you can actually leverage this product by joining other communities and other networks. And so you'll see the notifications are there as well if there are posts going on there. So here's the email piece. Remember, you are in charge. I say yam, you say win. Yam.
Win.
Yam.
Win.
You are in charge, right? We've got our own superhero power. So here's a screenshot of email notifications. Now, we love email too. Maybe you don't want as much email, so you can control that. Maybe you have somebody that likes to work in email, but you want the benefits of using Yammer. They can do that. It all works together, just with a few tweaks that you want to do in your setup. So here's an example of the email notifications. There is a digest that you can sign up for, where Yammer will aggregate the content that it thinks you would be interested in. That's based on who you're following, what groups you're in, and post in the all company. Then there's a series of other choices, and what I've listed here are kind of what are my top lists that I recommend. I want to know if somebody's mentioned me so that I can take care of that business. I want to know about if I'm monitoring a private group and somebody wants to get in. And then you'll see in the different groups how you can also control the email that you subscribe. So if there's a group that I'm interested in and I just started it, I just joined, maybe I'm not quite in the habit of checking that group, I might subscribe to it in email, and then once I'm acclimated and I have the habit built where I'm going to check that group, I might not want that email anymore. I can turn that off. Then there's the home feed. So when you first log in, there's lots of information that you're able to have access to. And so the big part is the top, all, and following. Those are different choices that you can make, again, based on what you're working with. So the top are all those key posts that, again, Yammer thinks are important to you based on those different things that you've done in the past, who you're following, what groups you're part of. All is absolutely everything that's public. So any public post in any public group would show up in that feed. So that's really drinking from the fire hose. And then following are the very specific things that you've chosen to follow, such as topics, documents, and people. And then the little cog on the right is where you can change that default for yourself. So for me, I tend to go between top and following depending on what I'm interested in. So if I want to change that setting for the next time, I go to the cog and then I can say use that setting and it will stay on that. And then again, I'm in charge, so down the road, if I don't want that, I want something else, I can just change it back. Now the big thing is posting in groups, very group focused. So groups can be teams, they can be projects, they can be events. This is where we found with a lot of our customers that they get the most value out of Yammer is when we're focused in groups. So those groups will show up on the left-hand side, and it's a nice, great, again, algorithm that's working in the background to present those groups in an order based on how often you interact. So if you're a type A person and you really like to organize alphabetically or last modified, that's not going to happen here. You're going to have to trust that Yammer knows what it's doing with those groups, and it realizes that if I interact a lot with a couple of key groups, it's going to put those to the top of the list, so I have easy access to that. All right, so groups are either public or private. So what might be a good example? So I'm going to have my colleague John roam the audience here. What might be a really good example of a group that you would make for public? Open up in your network. Who's got a good idea? Raise your hand, and we're going to send John back. Or he's just going to pick on somebody and make you think on the spot.
Constituent feedback.
Say it one more time.
Constituent feedback.
Constituent feedback. Excellent. Need to get feedback. A great way to create a group. Another group topic that we might use for a public group.
HR.
HR might want a team for HR. Perfect. What about something that might be a private group, something that's just open to the members in that group? What would be a good suggestion you might have for a private group? Managers, so they just want to communicate?
Accounting.
Did you say accounting? So accounting, depending on the numbers and what they're sharing. So from a broad topic, you're probably thinking more of a public perspective. Private, there certainly are occasions where you want things to be private. So accounting, if there's particular numbers that are not meant to be company-wide, or management, maybe they have a particular group that they're working with for leadership concepts, those things might be private. But keep in mind, a lot of what we do actually can be very beneficial to others in the company. And so if we think about making it public, or what I like to also call working out loud, it gives us the opportunity to make that information discoverable. So certainly we have to think through that process. Should it be public or should it be private? But I encourage you to kind of open up your eyes and open up your heart to new ways to work, what we took on our pledge today, to realize in the past we might have thought, well, this is closed door. But today, does it really need to be? Are we really having those discussions that nobody else really needs to know about? And give it some thought. Good news is you can actually turn a group from private to public and from public to private. So as an admin of a group, if you decide, hey, I really need to change that now, you can do that. In fact, that's what I did with the Zero to Hero group. So if you've had a chance to drop into that group and kind of scroll through some of the posts that I created, you'll see at the very beginning, I posted and I said to John, hey, I made it super secret for now, so you and I can kind of take a look at it and play with it and do some things. And then down the road, if we decide we want to open it up, we can. And so as we talked more about our session, we thought, yeah, this would be a great way to kind of have a playground and a space for everybody in. So then we made it a public group. All right, so it's going to be your turn. This is the part where John was saying as we come in, we're going to talk to each other. It's going to be Yammer in real life. We want to collaborate. We want to get ideas. So what we're going to have you do is visit with your neighbor. So turn to your left or turn to your right or maybe behind you. Find somebody that maybe you don't know. Ask them what their favorite superhero is. Share who your favorite superhero is. And then we'd like you to make a post. So let me show you what we're going to try here. So here I'm logged in. I'm going to go, and the easiest way to post in the right group is to start in that group. So I've made it a habit to go to the groups area first. You'll see Zero to Hero is right at the top of my list. It's been the most active group that I've been in all week. And let's say that John and I just met, so I'm going to tag John. I start typing his name, and it will auto-populate, and I can choose it from the list. So John, who is your favorite superhero?
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. So John's favorite, someone say fave, superhero is Spider-Man. And then bonus points if you want to add a hashtag, which you start with the hashtag, and I'm going to use superhero. So bonus if you'd like to use that. You can also add topics, the same idea of adding that hashtag without adding it, here in the lower left, and then I'm going to click post. So I want you to take a few minutes, and if you're not in Yammer, if you want to get in Yammer, that's great. If not, if you want to partner with somebody who does have it open that you could do the exercise with, and let's get a few posts going in our group. All right, Edwin, it does work. All right, Karen's asking the question in the post. I love it. Ooh, Wolverine, that's a good one.
Feel free to raise your hand if you need some help to get into the network. I'll be happy to walk over and see what's going on. Which network are you in? Let's find out what network you are in.
I'm just searching.
So my Ignite attendees, how do I...
You can also notice as you guys are working up here on the left where I'm in my groups. So this is a fairly new feature too where it's dropping in little photos and updating those messages notifications for me. Ooh, I like Zorro. It's a good one.
Okay. So you might have to go to myignite.microsoft.com and click on the login to Yammer.
I don't get that on my Android. I don't see that. I tried it from my app.
Try going to just using a web browser. You might have to scroll in a little bit and log in that way, and then you should see login with Yammer button on the right.
Oh, so I can't search.
Superman's always a popular one. Wonder Woman is great.
Because networks are like
Iron Man.
that way. You have to get into that building first.
Okay.
Of course. What's up?
We got the Yammer app. It's a personal Yammer account.
Okay.
So after you've made your post, scroll through. You can comment or reply on other posts. Remember that like? You can do a like. Batman. Gotta love Batman.
That site. It's probably best to just open up a web browser instead of any of the apps. Just go in and scroll in tight and click on the login with Yammer.
Do the myignite.
myignite.microsoft.com. For those trying to get onto the network, just to let you guys know that if you need to get onto the network, go to myignite.microsoft.com. Once you log in, on the right-hand side, you will see a thread. And on top of that thread, it'll have login with Yammer. Once you have done that via a web browser, you can go back to any of your mobile apps, look under More. You should see My Networks, and Microsoft Ignite should be listed as one of the networks. If it's not, please raise your hand and we'll be happy to help you.
All right, so we've got some great posts. So again, as this is going on, look up at my screen. You can see what's happening up here where the system is pointing to me, saying there's new messages coming in. Look at my notifications. So if I hover over the bell, it's telling me that's the notifications. If I click on it, then it's going to give me a high level about who's liked certain posts, if they've commented on my post, so I can see what's happening with that interaction. Here it's telling me I've got new followers, so I love to follow back. So let me do that right now. There's another like. All right. And then you'll also see here, it's click to see 10 new messages. So in that real-time moment, it's letting me know I've got new information here, and I can just default reset here. Catwoman, love Catwoman, she's awesome. All right, you guys are doing fabulous, fabulous. Now, the other thing you may have noticed is it is a public group. We did ask you to join, but you don't actually have to join public groups. You can. Certainly, that's where the join is up here. But since it's public, you can always pop into those groups and see what's going on. I tend to join them at first to kind of see if it's got activity that I'm interested in, so I get those notifications on the left-hand side. But totally up to you as to how you want to manage it. Because remember, you have the power. You're in charge. I say yam, you say win. Yam? Yam? Perfect. So the other thing to point out is, again, we want to post in the right groups. And so I popped over here because sometimes it's very easy to have this happen when we log in, depending on where we start, the all network, where everybody is a part of. And so we have a couple of posts over here that actually ended up in the all network versus our zero to hero group. So this is bound to happen in your network as well, whether it's all network or somebody's actually in a different group. In fact, just this morning, I did it myself. I was making the post, John and I, and our picture for crowdsourcing. I was on my mobile app, but I hadn't swapped over to the Zero to Hero group. I was in the Speakers at Ignite group. So I posted it there, and I was like, oh, that is not where I want it. So there is no move. I can't move the post. I can delete it, which is what I did, and put it where it belongs. Or another option, depending on how you want to work with your network, is to share it. So there's that share option. I'm going to click share. And I'm going to put this over in our Zero to Hero group. If I wanted to say something, perhaps I was introducing a comment back over for discussion, I could put that in. I'm just going to go ahead and click share. Do that for James as well. Didn't like that. So the question is about editing posts or moving posts, and is it on a roadmap somewhere? Not to my knowledge. It's always in discussion, so I would encourage you to keep bringing it up in our network. We have that feedback. Yep. But not to my knowledge. It's not something right now that they're focusing on. There's different aspects of what they look at, and they try to do that 80-20 rule. But we definitely. Right. Yeah, and all three of those are, I would say, great workarounds. That's what to delete or to, usually what we'll do in the Microsoft network is people will do a reply right to their post and they do a little asterisk or something like that or say typo. So yeah. But the other part I think to remember is it's a human interaction, right? So I think we're a little bit more open that we're going to be fast, we're going to be quick, that network and those pieces. But do appreciate that feedback, and I encourage you to keep giving it to us. Let me see if this will cooperate now. For some reason, this doesn't want to cooperate with me right now, so we'll circle back to it. Go back. That's right. It's not doing my cheer with me, so it's like, ah. All right, I tell you what, here we go. Come back here. And then we've done our activity here. So let's talk a little bit about notes. Now, again, if you're in the browser, if you're on a tablet or a laptop, you'll have access to edit or create notes. If you're on the app, you won't be able to do that just yet. I'm hoping down the road this might be something that we do have on our list, but you can see finished notes that are posted. So notes are a great way to collaborate in Yammer. Now, again, there are lots of other great tools that Microsoft has, that your company might have to do something similar. So it just depends on your use case as to whether or not notes are going to be of value to you. I find them wonderful because they're right there in the group. You can joint edit with up to 12 people. You can go back and see the different things that they've done in those edits. So I can see if John's made a change and I want to ask him about it, I know that he made it, and I know who to ask. So there's the color aspect of how it can show those differences. So great ways to use notes if you're doing a meeting agenda and perhaps you're trying to collaborate on it. So the meeting's on Friday. Maybe on Tuesday you create a note. You tag a few of your colleagues and say, hey, we're going to have a meeting Friday at 9. So what all is on your mind that we should talk about? Please edit this note. So it becomes a very collaborative effort to put those meeting agendas together. You can also use it for meeting minutes. So at that 9 a.m. Friday meeting, you could actually continue editing the note that had the agenda and add your minutes to it. So everybody has one place to go and find that information. I also encourage you to look at it other fun ways that you work within the office. Does anybody ever do a potluck at their office? Some kind of celebration, birthday parties, different things? If you don't, I highly encourage you to do that. I work from home, and we still go into the office for the potlucks. So in the Atlanta office, we use notes to actually coordinate our potlucks. So we use the Atlanta-based group. We promote it by sending out an announcement. We have a link to the note and ask people to go sign up for what they're going to bring. If they want to be very specific about what they're bringing, we encourage that. But if they just say, I'm bringing a salad or a side dish, that's fine too. So it's another great way as a power user to get people involved and a very easy thing to do, kind of not that scary commitment about making a wrong post or something about work when you're talking about something easy as an event going on at the office. So use cases. Use cases are kind of the big buzzword in a lot of technology. And of course, we know use cases are important because that's really how we map the value of whatever we're trying to do back to what's happening at the office. So there's all different aspects of use cases in Yammer. And depending on where you are in your journey, we have what I call the very easy ones or quick wins to start with, all the way up to ones where people share on our Office 365 network as to other ways that they're using Yammer. If you didn't get a chance to see Melanie's session yesterday, I'd highly encourage you to watch the recap, the video. Her network is about 3 years old, and so she's really kind of doing some different aspects with that network, kind of beyond the basics of how you can really leverage that into your workforce. So the key thing you really want to think about with use cases is tying it back to, remember that favorite radio channel, WIIFM? What's in it for me, meaning the person that I'm working with? Is it a manager? Is it somebody in accounting? Is it somebody in HR? Is it an executive? Why would they use this? I want to map it against what they're already doing, finding maybe some pain points of how they're doing it currently, and help them see if they do this, if they try this, let's give it a shot, that it could answer that. And so when you can map that against it, that's what we call a use case, or sometimes you'll hear business scenario depending on who you're talking about. But you really want to know what that impact is going to be. So a real easy use case is visibility. So often in our employee feedback surveys, people are talking about, I don't know what's going on, I want more transparency, I wish I knew what other areas of our company were doing. This tool can help you with that. There's lots of different functionality, different pieces of what you can work with. Announcements are one of those. As the network admin or the group admin, there's different announcement functionalities that you have capabilities for, so that you can essentially push out that message to be what we call a sticky note at the top. It'll go out in their email box if they've got that email notification turned on about when their app mentioned. And then when they log in, they're going to see it. So it's really where you want to give that extra push of information for everybody to take a look at. It's a great way to follow up on big news. So perhaps there's been a press release about your company or an award, to be able to share that information in Yammer. Give that visibility out to everybody. Of course, we know updates are very important in the right group. So we want things to be in the right group. In fact, I know John is wandering around. We're going to have somebody create a group. So I know he's on the lookout for somebody to do that for us so we can show you how easy it is just to create a group for activity in your Yammer network. So John, when you've got somebody ready for that, go ahead and bring them up. We want to join groups and follow those conversations. So like we've been seeing about with our superhero, how we can have activity going on. And then it's a really good idea, again, especially in the beginning, spend some time in it. Spend about 15, 20 minutes, do what we call discovery. Peruse those different groups that you're part of. Maybe you weren't tagged in a post. That's okay. You can still comment. You can still add value. You can still add knowledge to what's happening in the network. Another great case does tie back to leadership. We know that executive sponsorship, executive leadership is key for big success to happen with your Yammer network. So again, you have to map it against that leader's goals. What are they trying to accomplish this year? How is this going to help them get there? You have to speak their language and then show them how Yammer can do that with them. So somebody was talking about that manager private group. That could be an option. Did you know, Mr. Leader, that you could create a group, you could bring in all of the C-suite in that, and you'd have a collaborative space for you to be able to share information? Did you know, Mr. Leader, if you posted in an all network, everybody in the company can be exposed to that. So if you've got good news to show, you can share that. Did you know, Mr. Leader, if you have the app on your phone and you're sitting there waiting for your flight, you could hit like on a couple of posts and you're going to make somebody's day. So easy for anybody to work with, but when you can show them those tools, and it's so easy from a mobile perspective for them to participate and engage, and once they start seeing that traction, then they want to know more. What else can I do? What else can we do? So do we have our group creator volunteer, John? Did I lose John? Are you hiding? Do we have our group creator volunteer? You want to find us a group creator volunteer and I'll do one more?
We have a prize. Yeah, create a group. Tell everyone what group you're going to create so they can find it.
Okay.
Walk them through it.
I'm going to call it I Want Prizes.
I love it. That is a great group. So as he's creating that,
If you can go one step back and walk them through it, like what'd you click on?
Okay. Well, I'm on a mobile app, so I went over to, actually I have no idea. I went over to my groups, and there's a little plus button up in the corner. And then it asks you to create a group. So I just said, I want prizes, and hit create. And it was public, so you guys should be able to
Excellent.
get in there.
Don, want to show it on the screen?
Does he have the option to bring anybody in?
I probably.
I don't know if on the mobile it does. I can't remember.
Yeah, I should be able to invite somebody.
Yeah, if you can invite people, invite me. I will show that. If you can't, that's all right. Oh, that would be great. And what'd you call it? Something about prizes?
I want prizes.
I want prizes. So I'm just going to use our search function, and I'm going to hit prizes at the very top. Sometimes it takes a minute or two for it to catch up. We'll see if it finds it.
We have a question.
Is there a hierarchy of groups or just one flat namespace? And is there like domain name squatting for group names? And
There is no hierarchy for group names. And a lot of times what we also talk about is taxonomy or recommendations within your company about how you might think about using group names. So you only see so much, although I think with the new user interface, they are going to show more of the name that's showing now.
Worldwide public groups, or is there one set of names that you have to get your one in?
Oh, like does it come in with an HR or marketing? Not already set. You could create those groups and call them whatever you like.
It's within your own network. You can name it whatever you want within your network. It's asking you.
Correct.
Oh,
So
I see.
network
Sorry. Thank you.
names, if there is an existing network name out there in the world and you're trying to get it, it's taken. But all the groups underneath it within your network, you can have your own HR versus you can have an HR group, you can have an HR group, you can have an HR group. But within multiple networks, we'll probably get into external networks, maybe not. But if you create external networks, you cannot have HR throughout those because then it then falls under your world, your network.
So I found his group just by searching for prize in the search bar. So the search is really pretty good. I'm going to show you another feature of search in just 1 second. So it is a hyperlink. I'm going to click right on it. So here's the group. You can see that it is public. We've already got 23 people in it. That's fantastic. I'm going to join it as well. And I don't know if you have the admin rights on the app. It might be something you have to do in the browser. So I'll show that in my group. But the one who created the group is the group admin. A good best practice is to have 1 to 3, maybe more, depending on the size and content of your group, so that you've got somebody monitoring what's happening, making sure questions get answered, can point people to the right resources.
I say yam.
You say when.
We have a great question over here that I wanted to
Awesome.
share with everybody. So
Let's
please
hear
ask
it.
your question again.
If you start out with a private group and you make it public, can the people that are then invited see all the historical data?
Yes. So once you release it from a private to a public setting, everything is showing. So that's another use case that if that's not what you need, you could probably close that private group and then create a public group with bring those members in and then start. In fact, there are project groups that will do that, where I used to work, that they would have something behind closed doors, and then when they were ready to kind of do something else from a help desk, they would just create a public group. All right. So I'm back in my Zero to Hero. I want to show you those admin functions. You'll see that both John and I are admins to the group. Different ways that can work for us. I'm actually going to click on the little cog. So if you're a group admin, John, I think we've got a question right over here. Gentleman over here. Click that cog. This is where you can add an image. Again, I encourage you to be creative. We all love pictures, so pick an image that ties to your group. Your group name. We were talking about those group names. It does have to be unique in your network. A brief description, so somebody's perusing the area, they know. Do you have a question for me?
I was wondering if it is possible to create limited users in Yammer, and the use case is being in a K-12 organization, we did not want to have students going out to create groups just like staff. So is it possible to limit users in Yammer?
I'm not sure what the back-end side of limiting is. I think it depends on your infrastructure. Typically, it's a no question, but there might be some workarounds from the technical side that I'm just not familiar with. John, do you happen to know?
Most management of a network is done through AD Sync and through SSO. And so however you configure that on the infrastructure side will populate if you have that set up on an enterprise Yammer network.
Right.
That's going to end up in group names that you'd really rather not have than squatting and kids being kids.
Yes.
And that's actually why you want a good community manager. And there's different tools in place for keyword monitoring, checking what's going on. You can have a keyword monitor for the word created, so you'll know whenever a group is created. So if it's not what you're looking for, then as the admin, you can remove it, or you can send them a message that says that.
Request a group rather than I'm in it and I've got it.
So I doubt that's going to happen.
Okay.
That'll help.
Yeah, I could be wrong. Like I said, change happens. But the idea with the enterprise social really is to kind of create that collaborative effort. And so groups are open for anybody to create. Yes, you can certainly monitor that. So if you've got some taxonomy in place and you want to help remind people of the rules, or if you're a group admin, this is what we expect from you. Or if you do have a naming structure, this is how it should be named. They can certainly rename it. But the idea is we do want them collaborating and sharing information. Gotta love Barney. Thank you, Paul, for our superhero here. I also want to flip over to the notes. We were talking about notes briefly. I think some people might have gotten in already to edit, which is fantastic. We created a variety of notes, and you can also create your own, just to kind of show you how those work. So I was doing some different ones tied to those use cases. So if you're in a particular department, if you want to edit those notes, remember up to 12 people can be in a note at one time. There's some questions in there that you could kind of answer to get some discussion going. And then this is my cheat sheet, hashtags Lance. I wanted to have my brother's email address handy. So one of the other features that you may have seen that is coming out is that external messaging. So you can see as I start typing, it's giving me that heads up about include people from other networks. Now, to my knowledge, my brother's company is not in a Yammer network. I'm working on that. And I want to put him in this message. So when I have that in the notify, it gives me the little icon for email. I've got to click it. So again, it's giving me all the visual cues to notify me that I'm adding this in, adding this person to a conversation. It's not the group, it's not the network, it's the conversation. Notice the little post now has kind of like the world icon. It says you are adding these people. If I hover over that, it's letting me know which email I'm using. And then I want to add a picture. So notice I can upload a file from my computer. I can select a file on Yammer. I already have this picture on Yammer. Let's see if I can find it. They've uploaded all the great presentations, so I may not be able to find it as for that. Let's see, do I have it here? Let me just double check. So you'll also notice where I'm looking. All those, if you've done images or selfies, those get stored as well. So I'll show you where that is. Let's see if I can. Nope, I'm not finding it. So I won't worry about the picture. So I'm going to hit post. And then again, another visual cue for everybody in the group, or if they do a perusal through since it's public, they're going to see another post tied to this that I've added this person to the conversation. So down the road, if something changes, and now I want to remove them from the conversation, I can do that. Now on the other end, my brother is receiving an email about now or shortly thereafter, basically saying this message. And I've prompted him, so if he's not in a meeting, hopefully he'll get a chance to reply back, and you can see how that looks in the thread. So again, another way to collaborate. It's not just about our internal teams. You might be working with vendors, with partners, so the different ways that you can use that, depending on how you're working. And again, that's up to you and your network if you choose to opt in for that feature. Yes? Not as an auto transfer at this time. I think as we see more integration, so the question is about files that are sitting in Yammer, can they transfer elsewhere? Right now they're sitting in Yammer. So you can certainly include a link. If you have links in your OneDrive, instead of including the file, that might be a process or a best practice you put in place. And then down the road, I think we'll see that more integrated. So that's a great question though, so I'm going to click on the Files tab to show you that. And you'll notice there is the little drop-down arrow on the right. So I can preview, follow, share, download, or delete that since I'm a group admin. So you can delete your own as a user. If you're a group admin, then you've got the group capabilities to monitor and delete here as well. Yep, other questions? Yep.
Is it possible to get audit reports of actions for people in the admin groups? I'm assuming they have access to all of the private manager forums and groups as well?
Say that one more time. Is it possible they get what?
To get auditing reports of admin actions within the Yammer group, since I'm assuming they would also have access to all of the private management C-suite groups that are private.
So your verified network admin has some capabilities to extract information out of the analytics and the metrics. So depending on what you're doing, there is some things that are more easily dealt with than others. Others you can extract the full data and you have to do some DIY information to kind of display it. And then we have our third-party vendors as well that are interacting a lot more from a metrics and analytics perspective. So the verified network admin has all rights to do certain things. And then your group admin, they can't extract the data, but they can see what's happening within the group. They can talk to the verified admin if they want to narrow down something specific and get that information from them.
I don't think that was really the question. Maybe I'm.
Oh, okay.
I thought the question was more along the lines of, does the admin have the ability to go and drop in any group that they want to and just look at the content there? So if you have these top-level, very private groups,
Right.
what prevents the overall Yammer admin from looking into that?
As a verified admin, they do have access. Like your email account, you have your IT network, IT pros that work for you. They're trusted people that they can check any of your emails, log into any of your laptops. It's a scary thing, but as your IT admins of your organization, they have that trust. And so you have to be sure who you make a verified admin has that same level of trust.
What about the audit trail? I think that was the question. Yeah, the audit trail falls out.
As far as who's been in the group?
Well, if I'm an IT person, like I'm a director, so I have the access to C-suite. So what prevents me from making changes, from making moves, from making that type of thing? And if I do, what audit trail is there to protect the company against myself or my team or someone with or this verified admin has that high level?
So you are who you are. So if you make any changes, your name will be right there by it, and everybody will see it.
Yeah. Well, from the back-end perspective, there's one thing that you can do is, again, you want to make sure they're the verified admin, and then through being a verified admin, you're allowed to do a data dump of the entire network, files, folders, creations, and so on. Not being an analytics guy myself, this would actually be a great follow-up question that if you go to the MyIgnite and go to Yammer Enterprise Social Group, and we can ask that question there and bring in some of our experts to help answer that one.
And probably also find other companies who've got some different practices, best practices in place that they use to balance that off. So we'll show you that website as well. If you aren't a part of that network yet, that's also our parting gift is not only the hashtag, but the network. All right, let's flip over to our slides. A few more things, and then we've got another quick. You have a question? Yep.
Yeah. Are there any storage limits? I mean, does this count towards your mailbox limit, or?
Nope.
I mean, how large can this grow?
As big as you need.
No limits.
No limits.
There is a file size limitation. I don't remember if it's 2 gig or if that's or what that is, but you can have as many files as you want.
Okay, and second question, the Yammer interface you showed, is that customizable? Can you have, I think I saw groups on the left side and something, I mean, can that be changed around?
Nope.
Can you have themes that users can follow? Certain colors and like corporate templates that?
Nope.
Okay.
There is the basic.
There's the banner.
The banner.
But yeah,
it's pretty much is what your corporate brand is.
One for all and all for one. So the idea of and things, since it's in the cloud, and we're updating and integrating with Office 365 and other SharePoint Online, all those great tools, that there's not that ability to customize. So from a company, which is actually I think really pretty cool. Yes, it's a little bit of an adjustment for maybe IT and the users if you want more branding, but it really helps the end user themselves because if they're in other networks, it's same thing, same place, same bat channel, same bat time, different aspect. So that I know where to go find groups, I know where the inbox is, I know where the recent activity is, all that kind of stuff. So there is the banner bar that you could probably add some of that to, but as far as moving anything around, not customizable.
Quick question over here.
Great, bring it on.
Yeah, the question is the Outlook social connector is set up to link to things like Facebook and LinkedIn and public social networks. Is there any plans on integrating that to Yammer?
That, I don't know the answer to that. That would be another great question for the network.
A great question for the network, but as each group, you can actually email to the group. So if you're not on your mobile app and then the group has its own distinct email address, so you can email to that group to start a conversation. And at the same time, this is where a good conversation to bring up Office 365 groups, which we will not get into detail, but that is the end game of how we're going to tie in all of our products from utilizing Yammer groups, Outlook calendar, and so on and so forth. But that's the future of where this integration is going.
So another area for use case, and certainly something very easy to do and very much a power user, zero to hero kind of tip, is to think about praise. This is a great example very easy to use, very simple to use, and a great way to encourage not only manager to employee engagement, but peer-to-peer. at my job where I worked before I came to Microsoft. And when I left my job, I always said I was going to the mothership because I managed our Yammer efforts at a company of about 2,500 employees. Our HR department, we sat down and brainstormed. They really wanted to have more peer-to-peer recognition. How can we do that? How can we make, they didn't want to necessarily get one more tool to figure it out. I'm like, let's leverage Yammer. We already have a fabulous tool. Everybody on the company is already on it. Let's use that. So we put together a campaign. We actually created a group for it, but they were open to praise being done anywhere, but to really have a place to push. We had a group for it. We did publications or announcements around it so people would then give praise to their colleagues based on the work that they were doing. So again, if you want to play along, I want to show you over how easy it is. And again, it's great to be whichever group you want to give the praise in. So I'm going to click praise. And my buddy Peter's in the audience here, so I'm going to give a shout out to Peter. You've got a couple of different icons that you can choose to kind of give it a little bit more of that fun fact, go along with it. Let's say this week. Hey, to work with you. And then I think another best practice where it's got people to notify is if you know the person's manager or leadership, this is a great way to kind of get that public praise. I'm a big believer in we want to give public praise, and then we want to give private apologies or issues that went wrong. We don't need to announce that in public. But wouldn't it be great to have everybody know about this? So Chad is in our management team, our leadership team, and so by adding him as a person to notify, he's going to get that in his inbox and see, oh, Peter has a praise. Let's see about it. That's great. So instead of me sending an email, copying a couple people, or maybe not knowing who to copy, then I can give that exposure. Another great tip as a power user is to screenshot that information and use it when you have your annual reviews or biannual reviews. It's a great way to showcase how your colleagues are talking about you. Another way to grab that information is, again, it's in your profile. So I just clicked on my name. Remember how we could see all the content that I'm involved with? And then I've got the More option, and there's praise. So I can see this here. Oh, I love it. Do I get a prize too? So here's the praise. And so I can screenshot that. I like to do likes as a way to recognize that I've seen what people are talking about and have it all in one place. So we also use that in that HR campaign because once the employees realize it's a two-way street. When you give praise, that's wonderful for the person who's received it, but you also are shown in a very favorable light. So when you give it, you're also really getting that admiration as well. So again, I highly encourage you to use that as a use case for activities going on in your network. Feel free to do some praise and shout-outs for any of the speakers that were you attended their sessions this week. They would love to see that. Let's see if I can get over to PowerPoint. Maybe not. Doesn't like me today. There we go.
Question?
Yes.
Hi. Is all this content available on Delve?
So with the Delve integration, the public posts that are tied to in Yammer will be discoverable. I don't know if that's out yet. John, do you know if that's out yet, the Yammer being discoverable?
They're still working on that, but it will start populating any of the documents that are stored in Yammer versus SharePoint versus.
Yep. So that's the other aspect of kind of that discoverable things. If things are happening in Yammer, if they're happening in email, happening in OneDrive, then that Delve functionality can help pull it all together. All right, so back to your turn. Again, grab your mobile app or your browser. If you want to edit one of those notes, check that out. If you'd like to post a praise, or perhaps think about one thing that you know you can implement when you go back to the office on Monday. We'd love to have you share that in our Zero to Hero group. So we'll give you a few minutes to do that. We'll kind of wander around for some other questions going on.
As you guys are doing that, another quick tip that I tend to recommend to everybody is when you're on the mobile device, anything less than 8-inch screen size, the mobile app is great, it's convenient, but everyone knows that the mobile app is not as feature-rich as the web app. So I always encourage anybody who has an 8-inch screen or larger to just go ahead and open up the web version of Yammer.com when you log in and not use the app.
I love Mark's idea. Monday I'll make a group for all the project managers at my company. That's awesome.
We also use the idea of praise to get more people to join. We haven't put everyone automatically into Yammer.
Yep.
So we'll post praises, especially we have a digital achievement program and we'll post praises for that. But if the person who's achieved something isn't in Yammer, then we'll post it as a status update and then we'll make sure that we add them and their manager, but we'll use the same phrasing we use for our other praises. And that a lot of times will get people to join because they'll realize, wait, if I come join this, then people find out more about what I'm doing.
That's a great tip, great power tip to get people involved. Praise or just use your status update with the phrasing. Thank you.
As we're trying to simplify things for our users as much as possible, and we've already kind of had to make a jump in mindset over to SharePoint document storage, are files in Yammer intended to cannibalize some SharePoint file storage, or is it going to eventually get rolled into like a OneDrive for Business type tie-in, or how's that supposed to work?
So it doesn't take any of your storage. It's all in the cloud if you put it in Yammer. Using some best practice discussions to start, depending on how you're using both SharePoint and Yammer, is about files. There's a lot of different theories out there. There's really no one way or wrong or right. Again, Melanie Cargill, the way she describes it is if something's in motion as far as that file is concerned, they have it in Yammer. So people can collaborate on it together. They're working on it. They know where to go find it in their group. And then when it's at rest, perhaps it's finalized, it's official, then they've got a place on their team site or in SharePoint, and that's where it goes when you want the final finished document. So there's lots of different ways to use that. I also look at it as a great way to get people started in Yammer. Sometimes SharePoint might be a little intimidating. So if you have the ability for a file and do some collaboration around photos even, that can be a great way to start. Does that answer your question? Okay. And then John will be back around. I know we've got some questions up here too. Yeah.
Sort of. It just kind of seems like it's a little redundant if they're, collaborating on a document and, everybody's working on the same document, and we've just introduced this ability for them to all kind of co-manage this document in OneDrive or SharePoint or whatever you're using, and so now we have another platform that we're now saying if it's even more in motion, you can put it in Yammer and work on it and then kick it back over. I mean, it just kind of seems a little extra.
That's a great tip. When to use what was yesterday. Another part is I think you're absolutely right. I think you've got to have discussions with the teams that you're doing things with, define what those best practices are going to be for you and your team. Everybody's platform, as far as what they're working with and what they've started with, is different from one company to another. So some might just have Yammer, so that functionality there helps them with what they're doing. Others might be a little bit more integrated like you are, and that might be like, hey, we've got this set up over here. This is where we recommend it. But you'll still have somebody kind of on the outskirts go, hey, I want to try this here. It might be interesting, and do it that way. I think you have to be open to that.
And the conversation that came up a lot this week was, all right, John, you guys have all these tools, and now we have SharePoint, we have Yammer, and now you guys just announced more details about Office 365 groups. And so it's one of those things where we want to make sure everyone has a comfortable environment to work in. And right now, as we have all these individual products, we are coming up with solutions like Office 365 to give it more of a prescriptive solution versus hey, if you want to use Yammer, you can use Yammer. If you want to use SharePoint. But at the same time, we consider that a great thing because sometimes your staff or your employees feel more comfortable in this environment, how they work and how it looks and how it feels, or versus SharePoint. So you do have those options.
I think the big thing there is going to be the introduction of groups, because groups is now going to show up in Outlook 2016, and suddenly groups is going to have a lot higher visibility. And I think the ultimate question here about what to use is some guidance in some sense of where groups are a more appropriate tool than Yammer. To me, groups seems a lot more focused on a group of people who know what they're doing, where Yammer, at least in the environment I've used it with you all, and it's been absolutely fantastic to be able to interact with people prior to coming out here, because I set up a lot of meetings that way. But knowing that this may be more of a place to go and throw something up on the wall and get input from people who you might not know have interest or insight to what you've put up there. And so it's a little more free and more open environment, and it may work better for those solutions, whereas closed, well-defined groups may find themselves gravitating to groups and some of the more tool integration to the rest of 365.
Right. Like I said, I don't think there's one size fits all. I think what you described is very apropos. There is discussion in the Ignite network around the groups aspect, different pieces going along, and I think as more comes out, we'll see more use cases about when you might choose this versus that, just for those discussions. And again, knowing every culture and company is a little bit different, they're going to have those options available to them. But definitely it's worth a discussion. There's no one place to go. So just a few more things to kind of walk through. Some best practices. Again, it's about community. It's about getting your employees together online, discussing things happening around work, projects, events, serendipity of things that could happen. It's not meant to be a push mechanism. So definitely want to get your internal comms people on board with how they might leverage it, not necessarily to keep pushing content, but to engage, to create stories, to ask questions, to answer questions. We had kind of the philosophy of no question left behind. So we had our group admins monitoring, the community manager was monitoring. If somebody had questions, we wanted to make sure they got the answer. And then, of course, now we've got this great repository of information. So when new hires started or somebody changed jobs, they could do a quick search or drop into the right groups and get quickly up to speed. Some other tips. Quickly engage with your teams. Get a snapshot of what's going. This is another great thing for your leaders to have a pulse on what's happening in the network and at the company. Don't be shy. Engage. Start conversations. Click that like button. Do a quick reply. Add your 2 cents. It's valuable. People want to know. Ask questions, and I'd also offer up answer questions. I call it the pay it forward. So especially in the beginning, maybe if you're new to what you're doing or a new project, we're kind of not quite sure of all those things. We don't necessarily feel like we have information to add. Truth is you do. And somebody else will get value out of that. So pay it forward. Answer as well as ask those questions. And then show your personality. People do want to connect. So back to that kind of that edit thing and typos. Yeah, it might drive a couple of us crazy, but it's okay. We're all human. It's who we are. And then other things you really want to do is get your team involved. Think about ways that you could really leverage this to get them started. That was a great tip we had about the praise and the post that brought people into the network. Think about a no email day, where you're saying no email internally. Certainly if you've got customers and whatnot, you want to take care of them. But how might you use Yammer to get the communication going? We've got the Yam wins. So I say Yam, you say win. Yam. Yam. Perfect. So you'll see that's with a hashtag, and that's why we're using that throughout our morning. You could tag conversations with this topic as a high-level way to kind of showcase, hey, this helped. We got the information we needed. It makes for a great repository of information for your leadership to see what's happening in the network. In fact, early on in the network where I managed before, that was a key thing because people wanted to know, hey, if I got what I needed, if this helped me out because I didn't know who to ask or where to go, that was a Yam win. And that was part of our best practices and how we worked with people to use Yammer to mark those conversations. There's also Yam Jams. You've probably heard this mentioned a few times. There's great resources in the network about how to host and hold a Yam Jam. Basically, it's just an online conversation. So for a set amount of time, you've got perhaps a leader or a department who are sharing information or answering questions. Everybody logs onto Yammer, and they can ask and answer. And then, of course, the great part of that is it's around in the group for as long as you keep it there. Lunch and learns are a great way to go. Get people talking about how they can use it. Remember that favorite radio channel, WIIFM, what's in it for me? Find that out in those lunch and learns and share it. And then something else that I tried in my last job was what I called 20 minutes with a power user. What I found was a lot of people didn't have time for lots and lots of training. They were very interested, but blocking off an hour for their time was very difficult. So I thought, what if we go to them? So I used my champions and my power users, and we picked a couple of days during the month, and then we had people post when they wanted the champion to come to them. We used Yammer to promote it. We used the Yammer notes to put the schedule together, and we followed up on Yammer afterwards with, of course, praise. So there's great, quick, fun, simple campaigns that you can do that also leverages the tool and educates people on how to use. So a big part, and this is part of our pledge, leading by example. Get in there, try it. And I highly encourage you, and I'm going to show you the slide in just a second, to join the Office 365 network. So by a show of hands, who's already in that network? So maybe not even half, not even half. This network, the Office 365 network, is an amazing place to be. I think it's better than the success.office.com. I think it's better than sitting through training classes over and over again. What this does is open the door for community on all different aspects of our products. So think about what you're working on, whether that's Yammer, whether that's SharePoint, OneDrive for Business, change management, any of that. There's probably a group in this community that wants to talk about it. So again, you leverage the tool you already have to connect with people here at the conference as well as other colleagues to be able to find out and share information. So great and easy way to engage. And remember, it's the journey. It's all along the path that we want to create that value. So the Office 365 network, you'll see the link in the lower right-hand corner. To me, this should be your number one thing to do, if you haven't done it already, is to join this network. Many years ago, when I was shopping for a convertible. I knew I always wanted a convertible, and I didn't care what kind of convertible. It just had to be a convertible. I knew I was going to buy it used, and I knew I was going to buy it in the winter, figuring I'd get a better deal. So when I found the Miata, I absolutely fell in love. So now I knew my bargaining power was going to be restricted because it wasn't about the deal so much, it was about the car. But I still wanted to deal with the bargaining power. When I found the one that I bought, the gentleman that I bought the car from gave me a stack of Miata magazines. I didn't even know there was such a thing. He told me about the Miata Club. Didn't even know there was such a thing. And really encouraged me to go and check it out. And he was giving me tips on how to take care of this car. This car that he was selling to me. He was moving on to something else. He had just had a baby, so the two-seater wasn't going to work for him. I'd never heard of such a thing. I was not a car person. All I did was I wanted to have a convertible. I always say I'm a little old lady driver. I just want the top down, so the wind's in my hair. But I went to my first meeting, and what I realized was the only thing I really had in common with these folks were the car. But that was enough. It was enough to start conversations. It was enough to find out information. It was enough to share. And from that, I created good friends. We did different long-distance rides where I had the top down. We did charitable events together. We created car covers. We did reindeer ears for Christmas. It was amazing. I also got a reference to my mechanic. So as a female, I was a little nervous about who am I going to take my car to. So I got great references that I felt trust by. And then I also found a third-party marketer for the fun stuff you got to have for your car. So it's all about community. You have to start with something. So join this community. Find the groups that are important to you. Treat it like a lab environment. Think about how you can put this back to use in your own network. Any other questions? I see John Roman somewhere. Oh, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking you had a question. Any other questions? Are we good?
No, we just found out that our friend Courtney Brooks found the penguin and snagged him, so we're good for after the show.
Okay, rock on. All right, so let's close with our cheer. I say yam, you say win. Yam. Win. Yam. Win. All right, you guys have a great day. Appreciate it.